Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about audience research. It's a data-driven approach to gaining insights about your customers and really informing your entire marketing organization. So we're going to cover are you suffering from a lack of customer insights? Where should you take your brand? We're going to introduce the audience research program and why audience research makes sense, some of the key deliverables and the process, as well as some next steps. So are you suffering from lack of customer insights? If you haven't run analysis of your audience in the last year, you're probably making a bunch of uneducated assumptions regarding your messaging. When that happens, conversions usually start hurting. The message is flat, and that's because simply the messages you're putting out aren't resonating with your audience. So really what it's all about is about extending customer centricity to all SaaS functions. So from one end you have product. The well-managed product areas are talking to customers all the time, right? And even considering customer feedback to build the roadmap. And so that's a common practice. They need to talk to customers. On sales, sales is speaking to customers all the time. And there's a lot of hidden insights there in how the customers are reacting to sales presentations, what kind of messages are resonating. In customer success, there's a bunch of support tickets and app usage stats, there's support calls, and in-app chat communications that may be hiding a lot of insights there. In marketing as well, you have customer behavior, user behavior on the websites, but also marketing is starved to get in place a systematic method to collect qualitative insights about customers. And without that, it's very difficult for marketing to come up with effective marketing messages. So about getting the message right, really it's about winning the hearts and minds of buyers and users. And this is only possible when you can actually get into their minds. And the only way to do that is ask a bunch of questions. But if you think about it, how does a user perceive a brand that has the right message out there? And just to read through a couple of these, my experience was seamless and bug-free across different devices I used throughout my evaluation process. It's somebody buying from you. The copy was very clear and straight to the point. I don't remember getting confused about what they were trying to convey. I felt I could really understand what the company does and how they're different from the competitors. I found evidence of a track record of success, solving the very problem I'm trying to solve at this point. So as you go through this list, all of this is founded on describing the experience of a user interacting with a company that did its homework, understanding what's in his mind. This is where you need to get your brand. So when do you need audience research? Well, first signal is your message is not resonating and conversions are flat. You're entering a new market, or you plan to make sizable investments in marketing, or you don't know exactly why is it that you're selling, or why are you losing deals. Existing buyer personas were made by committee, most of the time pretty useless. So the point about audience research is that it eliminates all the need to make uneducated assumptions. And so it starts here. Then you get the right message, or implies the right content. It means putting together the right content in the right format, delivered in the right method, at the right time, and to the right audience. This means relevance, right? And with relevance come conversions. So there's 3 stages in the audience research maturity that you can go through and build upon that. So at the foundation level, you want to establish an initial end-to-end understanding of the customer via an audience research process. The mechanization, you can start automating some routines to conduct surveys during key touchpoints in the life cycle. And the scale, really you're establishing processes to gather and analyze feedback throughout the life cycle of the customer, and then propagating these insights across the organization. So what does an audience research project get you? There's a few very cool deliverables that you're going to see the value immediately here as I show them to you. This is how you can create messages that really resonate. Here, the first big deliverable is the insights aggregator. So say we run 15 interviews or 30 to 50 surveys. What we're going to do is go through each one of the responses in those surveys and then get the direct customer quotes and put them here in the first column. Then we're going to try to categorize those insights, those direct quotes, into 4 different categories. Push is Is this describing a struggle that drove the customer to look for a solution? Or is it describing a reason why they were attracted to your solution? Or did it describe a concern they have about moving forward? Or is it describing a perceived impact or realized impact the customer had? Is this referring to a particular feature of your solution? And then some segmentation data, like who said this? What was the source? What was the role in the evaluation process, in the buying process actually? And then does it belong to a particular vertical? Then we derive insight categories that we can tabulate. Also, well, with 30 to 50 survey responses, we may end up with over 100 customer quotes that we can use on marketing materials. Next deliverable is a buyer persona. Here is really the point is to start developing an empathetic view of the customer's world. It includes some contextual information about their job, their daily responsibilities, some emotional triggers. These are points in their journey where their emotion is at the peak, right? It may be at the evaluation stage or at the awareness stage, really, when they're feeling the pain. How do they feel about not being able to accomplish that? And then through the process of experiencing that pain, sometimes the pain is going to be so high or the motivation is going to be so high, that it's going to trigger them to act. So we want to capture that here in triggers. In anxieties, this is during the buying process. What fears and hesitations prevent them from working with us? We're going to have some real quotes there and an elevator pitch that we can craft, specifically a paragraph that we can use to position your solution to this buyer persona. And then we have value proposition maps. I like to include this in each persona. A value proposition map works like this. You have a circle that represents all the customer world. And you start by describing the jobs and responsibilities. What does he need to accomplish? Then, what are the pains that cause the user to experience negative emotions? What's so difficult about their job right now? And then, what are some of the overly positive emotions that the user can experience once the pains are gone? So these are like way over and above relieving a pain. This is like what would be really cool to achieve. Then on the square here, you have your product, and you start by listing out solutions, or there can be features or services you offer, how exactly your solution relieves pains, and then how exactly your solution enables gains. And then you can identify if there's a match or a gap between gain creators and gains and pain relievers and pains. Also included in the buyer persona, you want to include a set of statements of before and after, so that you can very crisply see how the life of that buyer persona is changing. What was their life before? What is it like after? Continuing with key deliverables, you have a competitive analysis is very important to understand the competitive landscape, and it helps come up with the most proper positioning for your company. Next, deliverable is a messaging guide. This is really a guide that can help you through development of content and even positioning the solutions that you have, but it includes the following. From a very basic description of what it is, what it does, what the solution does, what problem does it solve, the elevator pitch, unique value proposition, positioning statements, usually these are by buyer persona, one core message, and a bunch of non-core messages you can use in different cases. Pick a hero. This is the main buyer persona, the star of the story, the brand story. Next one is a buying process map. Mapping the buying process is very, very important so that we can get some context as to how we can make it easy for them to make that a decision or walk through that process. So first step is identifying every step from the moment the customer identifies a problem until rollout. Then for each step, we're going to identify what content type needs to be created to support each step and make it easy for them. Then we're going to map out some attributes. So for each step in the buying process, we're going to answer a few questions, like what happens, who's involved, what are some of the concerns, questions, answers that satisfy those questions, and then what kind of marketing activities you need to support that. Next is to take that buying process, extract the questions that the customer has during the buying process, and then start identifying the best content format to answer those questions. And then lastly, come with a specific content plan, topics, formats, or content types to develop that map perfectly to the buying process and that we can use as a content plan. Then the business model canvas. This is a one-pager that summarizes a lot of the research and conclusions that we have achieved, so that one page you have your business model represented here. So in summary, what an audience research project gets you, this you can do in stages, right? And one sits on top of the other one. So the first thing to do is you have to get buyer persona worldview. This is finding everything about your customers. So it starts with the research process. We put together the insights aggregator, the buyer personas, value proposition maps, the before and afters. Next is unifying your message. To unify your message, we need to complete the competitive analysis, do a messaging guide, and a business model canvas, and then mapping and understanding the buying process. So this includes the buying process map and the content plan and gap analysis. Lastly, we gotta look for ways to scale customer insights. So that means establish processes so that you can scale the gathering of customer insights, the gathering and the analysis of customer insights. And this may not be just surveys. It includes surveys like for new customers, every new customer, and every lost deal. But the point is to integrate this into your process. So how do we make it not a one-off exercise, but actually gathering insights is just simply a part of doing business. So establish some polling in key points in the life cycle. Customer join interviews with customer service and product teams. This is very important to establish. Marketing joins some of those calls. Sales calls analysis is very important. Like record your sales calls so that marketing can have access to that and extract transcripts out of that and see exactly reactions and what's resonating and signal what kind of content needs to be created to support a specific question or doubt or hesitation or reinforce a motivation. Then value proposition testing. You have to have a method to continually test all the value proposition options you're going to have. And then there's going to be some repositories, right? Some sharing platforms or documents that you can use to summarize all these insights and then spread them across the organization. This is useful for everybody, as we saw at the beginning of the presentation. So I'm going to show you a little bit what creating messages with and without audience research looks like. And this may be you, it may not be, but what I have typically seen is companies that do not conduct audience research are just basically making a bunch of assumptions. It starts with establishing the storyline, and then ask the copywriters to make the following set of assumptions there. So you're going to assume a value proposition, then you're going to assume that the problem described is the right problem and that it's being described in the right way. Assume the core message and positioning to come up and explaining the solution. Assume which key features are the important ones, then assume why those are important, and then make up the language to say it. Social proof is going to be very difficult to place. I mean, it's a very important aspect, making a decision to buy, right? Social proof, testimonials, case studies is going to be very difficult without conducting some kind of audience research first. Calls to action, well, you're going to assume what the buyer wants to do next because you don't have evidence. And then you launch, like you're going to perceive that the conversions didn't improve, then go through iterations, testing, but without the education of what the customer wants, I mean, you're going to keep wasting marketing dollars there on an ongoing basis and keep iterating for a long time before you see an uplift. Ultimately, you need to realize that you actually do need audience research. So with audience research, how does this look like? Well, you establish a storyline, and then instead of asking your copywriter to make assumptions, you're asking him to go look at the data to extract all what he needs from the value proposition. I mean, there's value proposition maps by persona. To come up with a way to describe the problem, you're looking at the prioritized pains by buyer persona, and then look at how the buyer describes in the insights aggregator. The solution, you look at the pain relievers and gain creators in the buyer personas. Then we have elevator pitches as well as positioning statements for each persona. For the key features, we're going to understand perfectly which ones are the most wanted features in the pull area of the insights aggregator, and gain creators and pain relievers in the buyer personas. For social proof, you can pick and choose. We have hundreds of usable quotes for the customer, so that if you're trying to support a claim on the website, you just go and pick the quote that you need. Then you just ask for the release for your customer, from your customer, and there you have it. You have a quote for the website. Calls to action, well, just by looking at the buying process, you can immediately see which calls to action are likely the ones that are going to resonate the best at each stage of their buying process. Then you launch, and like you're going to see an uplift, a strong uplift in conversions. You continue optimizing because there's so many options now. You have so much data to go through and test out. You have insights straight from the customer. This can be used to formulate different value propositions, test them out, and see what resonates with your audience better. Then expand the audience program right into a repeatable, scalable process. So basically, if you don't spend the time to understand the customer, you're signing up to risk thousands of dollars in potentially unfocused messages in months and years to come. And I have seen this over and over. Some evidence that this works, we'll have a couple of examples here with the Entrance Group. One of our clients conducted a pretty in-depth research at the beginning of the project, lasted about a couple of months. And we really wanted to understand why customers are coming to the site, what are the top questions they have. And just after understanding that, we recrafted the messaging and the calls to action on the homepage to give the customer exactly what they're looking for. Answer the questions that they most had. And just by doing that and building calls to action that drove those leads into the funnel, we're able to increase the marketing contribution to revenue by 53%. Really added 7 digits in revenue to the firm, 60% more leads, right? So it was a pretty significant improvement. Agile Trailblazers, another one of our clients, we went through also an extensive research process, and then from the results of the process, they were able to reshape their offering. So that, through the research, we found out, for example, that the change management process was very important in a digital transformation project. So they reshaped their offering so that one aspect is highlighted. Overall, we saw a good increase in conversions on their site as well. As far as the process, it's an iterative approach, right? And it's important to go through iterations here. But phase 1, we have all the data gathering going on. Customer survey, there's a sales presentation workshop. We're going to ask top salespeople to present to us. There's a product workshop. We need to get really familiar with the product. Phase 2 is analysis of the results, mainly all the time spent on the analysis of the customer survey and the sales presentation. And we come up with a bunch of deliverables here already described earlier in the presentation. The buyer persona worldview, unify your messaging, and understanding the buying process. And then the phase 3, we're going to help you scale that. Establish a buyer persona insights sharing platform, and then establish scalable methods to gather and analyze those customer insights. So one thing I got to tell you is that you got to be committed to become a customer-centric organization and extend that to the marketing department, because it's an immersive process, and there's some prerequisites here that you have to think through before engaging in a audience research project. Can you reach your audience with a survey? That's the first question. Is your audience large enough for this research? We require initially at least like 30 to 50 responses or 10 to 15 interviews. Are you engaged in marketing activities that could benefit from the research? Do you have an email database of customers or prospects to reach out to? Can you accommodate the research fees in your budget? Do you have sufficient budget to pursue other marketing activities once the research is done? Will the research timeline meet your needs? Are you willing to hear and accept findings that may not agree with your own assumptions about your audiences or about the way to describe a problem? Because this may have an impact even on the voice of your brand. And are you ready and willing to incorporate the research into your marketing activities? Are you ready and willing to make your marketing customer-centric and not company-centric? So, that's all, folks. Thank you. If you have questions, just reach out to me on my direct line at 678-458-1486. My name is Eduardo. I run Market8. You can also reach out through my website at www.market8.net. Thank you.